Without wasting time, let's now get into that conversation with His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun. You're welcome, sir. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Your Excellency.
Thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. I believe that congratulations are in order for the massive event that you had in Ogun State in Abeokuta yesterday. To us, it was like the grand finale for the Women's Month, throughout the whole of March. But I see that you have flagged off the Nigeria for Women project, and then the Okowo Dapo initiative. You've given out, some money to a lot of beneficiaries. And more importantly, you have also signed an executive order for the establishment of the Ogun State Women Empowerment, Inclusion, and Women Opportunities Bureau. Why all this? Why this sudden interest in women matters, Your Excellency?
Good morning, Steve. Thank you very much again for having me. And sorry about the technical difficulties that we had patching in with you. Well, let me say that what we did yesterday was definitely not sudden. This administration is a very deliberate administration, and everything we do is in line with our vision and our determination to be very inclusive and responsive. We are a population of about 7 million, and the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that 50% of that population are women. So whatever it is that we do for our women is not, we're not doing them a favor. They are very fundamental to the socio-economic development of this state. So we are being very deliberate. We wanted to do this earlier on in the month of March, particularly as that month was the International Women's Month. However, there were so many other programs that were clashing. And so we had it all planned. As you can see, the program itself is not something that was rushed. The Nigerian for Women project is a project that started over a year ago. We are very privileged to be one of the 6 states that were chosen by the World Bank and the federal government to pilot this project. And for clarity, let me explain what this project aimed to do and what it has achieved, so that you can better appreciate that it was not anything that was done suddenly. Again, like I said, this project started about a year ago. And a year ago, the idea was to encourage our women who would normally rely on when we are having elections. They are the most dependable and reliable part of our population. And we politicians, we find them as the most dependable and most consistent. But sadly, once elections are over, these informal sector, particularly the ones that are at the lower cadre of the society, are difficult to either remunerate or for them to feel the dividends of democracy in particular. So what do I mean? These are women that you cannot give contracts to. They're women that you cannot employ. They are mostly traders. And some of them are probably involved in artisanry work. They are hairdressers, and so on and so forth. So it's oftentimes very difficult to impact their lives. But there's something they do that's very interesting. They form themselves into cooperatives. And those small cooperatives of maybe 5 or 10 women, they contribute money that they use for social functions or that they use in helping each other. So the Nigeria for Women project aimed, to improve on that cooperative initiative that we've always had as being a fabric of our society. And we as the Ogun State government keyed into that because we saw it as an opportunity to indeed, impact the lives of these women that are oftentimes forgotten by all of us. So yesterday was twofold. There were 2 events yesterday. We had a plenary session which was aimed at talking about the all-round wealth for women and financial independence. That happened in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we went to this empowerment program. Now, let me tell you how successful this program has been. In the last 1 year, it started, in 3 local governments were chosen as pilots in Ogun State. And each of those local governments are broken into wards. By way of explanation, Ogun State has 236 wards. And these 3 local governments have about 30 wards. In each of the ward, we appointed what we call ward facilitators. We call them WFs. And each ward has about 30 ward facilitators. And the ward facilitator's responsibility is to go into the wards and form these women into groups. We call them WAGs, ward affinity groups. Each group has between 15 to 25 women. So once you have 15 to 25 women, that's the maximum the group is allowed to have. Then you have another group, another ward affinity group. So, the ward facilitators' responsibility is to group our women in each ward. Now, let me tell you what has happened. In these 3 local governments to date, we've been able to aggregate about almost 3,000 women. 3,000 women in ward affinity groups of 15 to 25 each. Now, these women have been taught what we call, they've taught what we call social capital, which basically is the idea of coming together and forming a cooperative to relate with each other, to save and to invest. That was very fundamental. And also, they have been taught what we call livelihood programs. And these are basically teaching them, financial education, financial literacy. Because these women, the mama put that sells rice, the woman that sells the recharge card, the woman that produces adire, the woman that sells coke by the side of the road, your tailor, they don't understand basic accounting. They are turning over cash. They believe they are making money. But indeed, some of them have people that come and eat on credit or buy on credit. And at the end of the day, they're just turning over, they're not actually making money. So the ward facilitators not only have grouped them, they've also taught them, basic accounting, and financial education. And having grouped them, the World Bank has put some funding into it, which the Ogun State government has also supported with counterpart funding. And let me tell you what has happened. These ward affinity groups have grown into, like I said, almost 3,000 groups and about 37,000 women over the last 1 year. 37,000, you heard me say. Within these 37,000 women, we're talking about a financial turnover of over 270 million. This has been the most successful project in the entire country. So you can see that this is not something that happened overnight. It's something that we have taken steps to partner with these downtrodden women, women who are actually the backbone of their various homes, who have very little capital and who need very little. But with what they need, they bring stability to their home, their family, their children, they support their husbands. They also become financially, independent. And we as government see this as a fantastic opportunity to, provide them with dividends of democracy. So this was what we were launching yesterday. And we decided that we were now expanding this from just 3 local governments to 17 other local governments. So we've used this very successful World Bank model to now begin to implement what we call Dapo, which when we launched it in 2020, we wanted to be providing soft loans for these women. But we were not very successful because we didn't have a model like this. So having seen this very successful model at work, we decided that we are going to borrow this model, we are going to build on it, and we are going to inject funding into it so that we now have it spread across the 20 local governments. So you can imagine if we have 37,000 women involved in 3 local governments, what you'd expect to happen when we have this happening in 20 local governments and 236 wards. So you can imagine having these ward affinity groups across the 236 wards. I do not have a doubt by the end of the year, we'll probably have maybe 150,000 women. Let me tell you what happened the day before yesterday. One of the women affinity groups came up to me and the World Bank country representative, Shuban Chaudhry, and said they want to start a microfinance bank. We thought it was a joke. A microfinance bank, a women affinity group of people who are practically stark illiterate, have now developed a culture of saving, a cooperative culture of lending themselves money reliably with no interest, hassle-free, to the point where they feel so confident that they have the numbers to start a microfinance bank. So you can imagine how successful this has been.
Absolutely.
So this is what has happened, Steve. It was not anything that happened by accident.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Thank you very much. I mean, Governor, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for joining us on the show. You talked about, at length, the levels of preparation that you put into these different programs and these initiatives, all with the mind of putting women first and empowering women. And when we look at your organization of government, we know that Ogun State is one of few states in Nigeria that have a woman as a deputy. So we do know that the presence of women clearly must be important to you. I mean, I know you've spoken at length about the efforts you've been putting in these events recently, and you did mention that this is something in terms of the Okowo program, that's something that was in place since 2020, and then more recently you've had that project in mind for around a year. So it's obviously clear that women are important to you, but I do want to ask you first and foremost how this empowerment program fits into the already existing aspects of your own integrated economic policy. But before I hand over to you for that question, I also want to talk to you about the prospect of women in politics. Now, I did mention that your Deputy Governor, Noimat Oyedele, is obviously a woman too, but you'll also be aware, I'd hope, that your former Special Advisor on Communication, Modele Sharafa Yusuf, has declared her intention to unseat you. And when she made that declaration, she was asked about whether or not, or how she felt rather, about going for the seat of a mentor of hers, her former boss. And she said the reason why she had made that declaration and had the intention to run for governor of Ogun State under the APC is because you hadn't formally declared your intention to go for a second term. So my second question, Governor, is also, are you seeking re-election?
Well, Adefemi, thank you very much. It's been a while. Let me attempt to answer your first question. Your first question was that how does this fit into our overall vision and policy and our disposition to women in governance and politics? Let me tell you, not only am I the only governor that has a female deputy governor in the Southwest, I'm one of the two that has a female deputy governor in the entire South, and one of the three that has a female deputy governor in the entire country. When I assumed office, I had a female deputy governor, I had a female head of service, I still have a female chief judge. In the last local government elections, I insisted that we must have at least 40% representation among the local government council chairmen. It was tough because our men was the one going to give them a chance. I succeeded in having 2 council chairmen out of 20, but I also persuaded them, and today we have 9 vice chairmen out of 20. So we're not doing very badly. So it shows you that we're very deliberate about women inclusion in not just governance, but also in politics. Now, let me tell you, this fits into our overall vision of being a good administration that upholds all the tenets of good governance, which includes, amongst others, to be inclusive and to be responsive in governance. And we believe that if we indeed want to be inclusive, to be responsive, to be accountable, to be transparent, to be equitable, to be just, to be fair, fair and equitable, we must ensure that women are represented in governance. Now, like I said, The population speaks for itself. We're not doing them a favor. We cannot have meaningful socio-economic development without the input of our women, who are very, very, very stable. So having established that fact, and by the way, Ogun State has a track of very eminent women. Dr. Olufulan Ransom Kuti was the first woman to drive. We have people like Mrs. Kuforoji Olubi. We have Mrs. Ajanaku, who was the first elected council chairperson in this country. So we have a track record of very, very successful and eminent women in Ogun State. But having said that, so I think I've laid to raise the fact that this fits into our overall policy and our vision to ensure that we create a partnership, with the private sector, because we believe that will bring economic growth to our state, and with economic growth comes individual prosperity. We cannot claim to have individual prosperity and overall wealth if our women are not factored into the equation. Now, having said that, your next question was that you mentioned that one of my assistants had, actually my special advisor on information, had declared her interest to run for office of governor. And I must say that, every ambition is very legitimate. It's within everyone's right to aspire for any office anywhere. So I do not think there's anything wrong. I actually don't see anything wrong with Modeli Sharafa Yusuf wanting to aspire for office of governor. The question you raised about indications that I have not or am yet to declare my intention to run for a second time. As you can see, the job of running government is not a walk in the park, and for some of us that come from the private sector, we take this very, very seriously. This administration has a vision, and that vision is being implemented through what we call our developmental pillars, which are acronymed as ISHEA: I for infrastructure, S for social well-being and welfare, E for education, Y for youth empowerment and job creation, and A for agriculture. I've been extremely busy implementing my vision through these verticals. And one is not going from one election to another election. What you're doing is trying to deliver on the mandate that's been entrusted to you. And it is the people of Ogun State that would determine whether you have qualified, you have performed, you have successfully delivered on that entrusted mandate within the time period, and you deserve a second term. I do not imagine that declaring for second time should be my preoccupation in the month of January or the month of February. So I don't understand, and I never sat down with anyone, anywhere, Modeli inclusive, to have such a discussion about me running for second time or not. So I don't understand where that is coming from for the light of me, but I'm not going to go into those details. I believe that at the appropriate time, when all others, my colleagues in the country, are beginning to indicate and express their interest to run for second time in office, I'm sure that I will do that, and the people of Ogun State will decide whether I deserve a second time or not. In the meantime, I'm very focused on delivering, these dividends of democracy by way of, purposeful, monumental infrastructure development across the length and breadth of Ogun State. And I must say, for the avoidance of doubt, this administration in the last 30 months has focused on part of that issue, which is infrastructure, because that is, what ties all of us together. It ties social women and welfare together, because, without infrastructure, you cannot do anything else. And infrastructure straddles security infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, housing infrastructure, health infrastructure, education infrastructure. And I must say that in the last 34 months, without sounding, very immodest, this administration has constructed over 300 kilometers of meaningful highways. We proposed, to build on our competitive and comparative advantage, over other states, which is being the only neighbor that Lagos has. Lagos is the financial capital of this country. We are the industrial capital of this country. Last year, we had the highest foreign direct investment because, you know what, Femi? We prioritized roads leading to Ogun State from Lagos. We appreciated the fact that it is important to facilitate the movement and ease of persons moving across our borders that are clearly not existent. So we know that we are the overflow for Lagos, and our competitive advantage is to make sure that people can come to Ogun State, live, work and play in Ogun State, live in Ogun State, and work in Lagos. You appreciate that the relationship between Lagos State and Ogun State has never been like this. We are like twin states. As soon as we assumed office, we started what we call the Lagos-Ogun Joint Development Initiative, where we are cooperating on tax collection, on law enforcement, on environmental issues, on water supply, on mass transportation, among so many others. So today, I mean, Ogun State gets a check from Lagos State every month because, you know, the residency rule applies where if you live in one state and work in another, you pay tax, you know, where you live. So you can see that we've built or reconstructed the Ekpe to Ijebu-Ode road to a first-class 5-star expressway. We're constructing the Agbara-Aton-Lusada road. We've constructed the 42-kilometer Shagamu-Abeokuta road. These are federal roads. But these roads have facilitated, you know, the ease of doing business. Ogun State has moved in that ranking. More people are coming to live, work, and play in Ogun State. We are constructing, you know, a truly international cargo airport, which was flagged off sometime March last year. By the grace of God, that airport will be finished, you know, completed by December of 2022. It will probably be the fastest constructed international airport in Nigeria, and it will become an alternative airport to Murtala Mohammed. It will be the only international airport between Kwara, Lagos, and the Delta. And let me tell you more about this airport. This airport is located in a free trade zone, in a property that is the size of 10,000 hectares. That's probably about the size of Ikoyi, Lekki, VL put together. In this airport, which we now call an metropolis, which is actually an airport village, we're having a special agro-processing zone. And what is that? An SAPZ is a zone where you have a collection of agro-processors. Ogun State has the highest number of agro-processors in this country. At the last count, about 90 of them. So you have your Unilever, you have your Nestle, your Olam, your Apple and Pears, your Cadbury, and the list is endless. So we now have a special zone where these agro-processors will be taking agro-produce from our plantations. Ogun State has palm oil plantation, rubber plantation, cashew plantation. We're the #1 producer of cassava in the entire world. We're the #1 producer of eggs in this country. We're the #1 producer of poultry in this country. We're the #1 producer of rice in the Southwest. We're the #1 producer of catfish in the country. I mean, we have so much happening in Ogun State. We're harvesting all this, and all this will come into what we call aggregation centers in the SAPZ for processing. This is processed, and export of the ones that are air freighted will be air freighted from there, and the others that are going to go by sea will be taken to the seaport, you know, which is just about an hour away because of the road network we have, the fantastic rail network that's been provided to us by the federal government. So really, you know, as a matter of fact, the African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, is building the first ever international standards testing center in the same SPZ. And what is this? It's a center where agro-produce will be taken to, tested, certified for export. Today, Nigerian yam cannot be exported directly from Nigeria. You have to take that yam to Ghana, and it's certified in Ghana and then exported. When this is completed, by the way, this testing center will be completed in another 2-3 months. At the site, Nigerian produce, agro-produce for export will be taken there, certified and exported. This SAPZ or this metropolis promised to employ between 25 to 30,000 persons. You know, and we've seen this, you know, work, you know, successfully elsewhere.
All right, Your Excellency. I mean, you've really...
I'm so excited. I'm sure you can feel it.
It's so obvious, but I like the fact that you touched on the issue of the residency rule and the fact that you are collecting checks from Lagos State over tax. I thought it ought to be a two-way thing. You know, is Lagos State also collecting some, you know, checks from you, those who, you know, because it can't be just Ogun State who have residents in Ogun State but working in Lagos State that you are collecting taxes. I'm asking this because of what your predecessor in office, Senator Bikunle Amosun, said, while he was in office, that your state was losing about 1.5 billion naira monthly because of the tax issue with Lagos State. But it's good now that you say that it's been sorted. So I would like to know, which is the first question, if you are no longer hemorrhaging tax-wise. And the second question,
well, like I explained,
well, I mean, you have to answer this after a break. We will go on a short break, but I'll still ask the second question when we return. Please don't go away. Do stay with us, Your Excellency. You're welcome back to the morning show on Arise, and thanks, Your Excellency, for staying with us. So I asked the tax question first, but I'll just quickly add to that. Tell us how this Okowo Dapo and the empowerment program will be funded. Is it a free meal to the women that you have mentioned, given the fact that you say that this might grow into about 150,000 women beneficiaries later? I'm asking this because of the debt profile of your state. You're one of the top 5 indebted states in Nigeria, with, as at December 2021, 232 billion naira in debt. How have you managed the resources of the state since you've been governor? And why are you basically dashing out money to these women? Does it have anything to do with the election that is coming, even though you are yet to make your declaration known formally? If you can take the two together, sir.
Well, well, Steve, thank you very much again. Let me assure you that the benefits between Lagos and Ogun State have been very mutual. Again, for emphasis, the residence rule applies. For those that work in Lagos, that work in Ogun and live in Lagos, we also exchange data. The most important part of this relationship is that we have a relationship that allows us to access data and exchange data between both states. We have 2 institutions, the Lagos Inland Revenue Service, the Ogun Inland Revenue Service, that are now collaborating for the first time successfully. So the issue of who pays who, what, is clear and defined. To the extent, this begins to answer your second question. Yes, we have a debt profile, like every other state has a debt profile. But you know that you would probably say the same thing about a state like Lagos. Our debt profile can only be as high as our GDP, our economic activity. Regardless, and I don't want to go into what was what I inherited and what the exposure I had before I assumed office. All I'll say is that our debt to our revenue ratio continues to allow us to access, loans from the relevant agencies and subject to the approval of DMO. So, if we are not seen to be solvent, we will not be able to access those loans. I can assure you that Ogun State remains one of the few states today that continue to pay salaries as and when due. When I assumed office, I made a tripartite agreement between myself, God Almighty, and the civil service. And I said to them, you will get paid before the last day of the month. The only day and the only time salaries were paid on the 30th was my first month in office, because I was sworn in on the 29th of May, and I found out that they had not been paid. So I had to ensure that I paid them on the 30th. Besides then, the civil service of Ogun State have been paid between the 24th and 26th of every month. Last year, by December last year, our IGR had grown to about 110 billion. We were the state with the most improved IGR by mid-year last year. 110 billion represents about 100% increase in our IGR in the history of, and this is in real time, in real terms, not fiction. So in terms of solvency, our ability to meet our debt obligations, I can assure you that through creative financing, my experience from the private sector, public-private sector partnership, we're doing very interesting things in Ogun State. Amongst other things, when I talked about infrastructure, I talked about housing infrastructure. This administration has built over 1,200 affordable housing as part of our economic sustainability plan. And what are these? We're building houses we're selling for 6 million, 7 million naira. And for us, it's a double barrel win. We're building houses, we are turning our citizens in that lower cadre to landlords. But at the same time, we've been training artisans. We've been training those that didn't think they were employable to be carpenters, to be bricklayers, to be painters, to be welders. And we have been busy deploying them to these sites. So you see that when we had NSAS all over the country, it affected Ogun State, very minimally. At the anniversary of NSAS, there was nothing in Ogun State because Ogun State indigenes were busy. So that's talk about infrastructure. The same thing is happening in health. We're the education capital of this country. We have more universities here than any other state. We have more secondary schools than any other state. We are graduating more students here than any other state. We've intervened at the basic education level. We are rehabilitating schools. We've done over 1,000 school rehabilitation across the length and breadth of this state. So in terms of doing the needful, we are doing that. We are partnering with the private sector like it has never happened. This state has existed for, how many years? 45, going to 46 years. This is the first time you see a Dangote, coming and saying, I will build XYZ road. Dangote is building a road that goes from Ekpe to Odogbolu to Omu to Ijebu now. He's building the one that goes from Shagamu to Ilaro. We're talking about over $100 billion investment. Macadamia is building from Adodota to...
Mr. Governor,
where am I heading, Femi?
Go ahead, we are fast.
I'm trying to share with Steve.
We appreciate it. We see the good work that's happening. We are running out of time very quickly. I just want to squeeze in one very quick question I'd implore you to answer very, very quickly. When we look at January, for example, we do know that President Buhari came to Ogun State and seemed to be very impressed with the level of infrastructural development that was happening in Ogun State. He even described it as promises made, promises kept. When it comes to infrastructure, education, health, and all of these other tenets in Ogun State, what can we expect from you in the immediate future that will continue on this progression for the people of Ogun State? Very quickly.
Thank you very much. Yes, President had very good and kind remarks to say, and we're very thankful for that. It's been very motivating for us, and it's spurred us to do more. In the area of health, we are rehabilitating primary healthcare centers, and our aim is to ensure that we have one PHC per political ward, such that every indigene of Ogun State can actually walk within walking distance to every indigene. To that extent, we are about getting to about 100 now. We have 236 wards. By this time next year, we would have begun to reach about the number 200. We are providing them with tricycle ambulances because we're employing what we call the hub and spoke approach, which means before you go to a secondary healthcare facility, you would have gone to a primary. We've launched our primary health insurance program in Ogun State that has been very successful. So we're providing health insurance, services to these downtrodden for 1,000 naira a month for the ones that are in the informal sector. We even have the ones that are providing free for those that are poor and vulnerable. So the idea is to ensure that every indigene of Ogun State can walk to a PHC. If that case is beyond a PHC, he is now taken to a secondary. If it's higher than a secondary, then it's transferred to a tertiary. So we are revamping the entire sector. We are looking at ensuring that all our schools in Ogun State are befitting. We're trying to ensure that we have enough mass housing. Our target for mass housing is 2,500 by the month of May 2023. My priority for this year, however, is in the area of electricity, because that is what you need to catalyze industrial growth and manufacturing. Because the gas network crisscrosses Ogun State, we are going to ensure that some of our cities begin to enjoy 24 hours uninterrupted power supply and the provision of water. Those are my priority for the year 2022.
All right, Your Excellency. I mean, we would have loved to ask you more questions. Certainly, we would have loved to know your position on the convention of your party.
There's a question that I was leading to. There was a question you asked me about funding.
Yes.
Funding.
Okay, sir. Please go ahead.
Funding the women affinity groups.
Yes, please. I
was leading to that before Femi interrupted me. The partnership we are forming with the likes of the World Bank and various financial institutions are bringing so much funding on to these programs. Yeah. So government is hardly having to dip into their pocket to form this, to fund this initiative. So this is not an opportunity for us to take government money, and this has nothing to do with my re-election. Like I said to you, this program started over a year ago. They were initiative of the World Bank, supported by the federal government, and it's happening in 6 other states. So it is not something that is a Dapo Abiodun only initiative. It is just something that we've seen, we've taken ownership of it, and we've developed it, and we are very excited and passionate about it.
All
right. Thank you so much, and we must congratulate you again for the attention on the women folk. We wish you the best in your endeavors, and if you do declare, may the best candidate win. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much.